Welcome everyone to another edition of Philosophy Live, Wednesday night. I think it's the 22nd, is that right?
Third.
Yes.
23rd.
It is 23rd?
No, it's the
It's
22nd.
Okay, camera lies.
Camera's already messing us up.
That's 23.
August 23rd, 2007. Tonight's show is going to be about human happiness. We've got a whole slew of guests to talk with about this topic. We're going to try to address it, as always, from a philosophy standpoint. We have a lot of different perspectives. And since everyone is going to have something to say about happiness, it's going to be a really interesting show. After I learn to talk slower, what we're going to do is have two callers tonight. We have me, Nick Jade is your host. We have my co-host, as always, Leslie. Later on, we'll be talking to our other co-host and regular, Craig. We have Marla Singer as the administrator. You can show Marla Singer as the administrator if you want to. Who will be administrating the chat room and taking calls. If you guys do want to call, feel free to go to our website and get the number and call. It's probably better to go in the chat room and request a call. You can whisper to the administrator and ask to be called back if you have a legitimate question. If you do want to ask questions in chat, type your questions in red. What's not working? It's because there's no one in the room. Have that happen before you can chat.
It is.
You've got a whole bunch of people watching because they probably already featured us, but until people come in the room. What do you want? Right?
She just said she loves you.
No, she's not. She's talking to someone else, like always.
We love the chatters.
Oh, you love the chatters. Okay, so tonight, again, we have me, Nick Jade, your host. We have the co-host, the wonderful, even though she's in love with Craig, co-host Leslie. We have the other co-host, Craig, who's trying to steal her from me. We have upcoming on the phone, Dr. Lowell McRoberts, psychiatrist. We have, of course, as always, Liv the Magnificent, the knowledge database robot from St. Louis, Missouri. And any callers that can somehow find their way in between this tight schedule. So tonight's show is about happiness. We're going to be discussing what makes people really happy, what makes people all say they're happy when they're not, and maybe the qualities that we can use to define happiness. And I don't want to say too much, because there's going to be all kinds of crazy information. Is there anything you want to add to that about happiness? I know you think that I'm a miserable person, so you might want to start there.
I don't think that you're a miserable person.
You don't think I'm
No,
miserable?
I do not.
You always tell me I'm miserable.
No, I never have said that to you.
You just think I'm confused.
No, I think you are, just
You think I'm just too sober?
no, I don't think anything, really. I think you're happy.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to get around to that because I know that perspective's going to change really quickly.
Well, you can be negative.
Oh, negative. What does this mean? Are we getting to something here?
No, I don't think you can be negative.
You're going to take back everything until 5 more
Well,
vodka
it's
tonic.
complicated. It's a lot more complicated than that, I think.
So I'm just complicated like
Happiness
depression.
is a complicated thing.
I thought it was something simple.
If you're simple. Simple.
So really you're saying I'm complicated.
Yes.
Okay, if I'm complicated, you should like me better than Craig, I think.
I could be even more complicated.
I think Craig's pretty complicated.
Okay, but he's too complicated. That's my point. Craig's too complicated. That's what I've been saying this whole time. I'm the right balance of complicated.
Okay.
No?
Yeah.
Have one more drink. I'll sound really complicated.
I'm saying okay. That's
Hide
all
the
I'm
vodka and
I
one
don't
of
have a
our...
microphone again. I just realized this whole time I'm talking. Oh, I have this
No, you've
one.
been on that one.
Okay,
You're fine.
go ahead. What did you say?
We were leaning towards her, so you had to. So one of our guests says that happiness is a quest for truth.
Ah, that is true. I do believe that.
How do
I
you
thought
believe
Leslie would
that?
like that. I thought Leslie would like that.
Because it's so vague, you can latch on. Okay, what's the quest for truth?
The quest for truth is to find out what's true.
Right, but how do you do that? How do you know if something you find is true is really true?
Okay, you make a decision to find out which is
Okay.
true. And I think once you go into that pursuit, I
Okay.
think that's happiness. Because I think that is a true thing to be happy about.
You just made the whole thing up.
What if truth is really depressing, though? Like,
Right.
if
No, but truth isn't depressing. I think
Never?
truth is the greatest thing in the world. I really do. In any world.
It's the greatest thing. I think you said money was the greatest thing last show.
I don't think I even said that. You're like totally saying stuff that I didn't even say.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was speaking with a psychiatrist earlier in the week. Not my therapist, by the way.
Do you have a therapist or something out there?
No, I don't, but I should. I need one.
So people have driven you to therapy, is what you're saying?
That's a true statement. I'm not going to name any names. But in response to kind of you saying the quest for truth could be part of that happiness, she was saying that it does seem that people's process seems to bring them happiness. Their process to achieve some kind of goal in therapy or in their life kind of is what makes them happy, is having that process.
And I
having a
think
goal.
consciousness of that process as well. Because if you just go through
What does
the
that
process,
mean?
Well, you have to be conscious that it's an actual process, because if you're not conscious of the process, then you're just gonna be like.
I mean, if you're just like
what-
wound up and just go
Yeah, you're
like
gonna
a
be like,
robot.
what's going on? I don't know what's going on. But if you're conscious that it is a process and your ultimate happiness to get there is a process, then I think, yeah, the whole journey there will be happy.
Really?
I do think that.
What if the journey's wrong? What if
Well,
I'm?
the
What if I
journey's
think
wrong,
the journey's
then
supposed to be this way and I go on the wrong journey and end up at
Well,
Craig's
then
house?
you won't be happy. If you're going in the wrong direction of
Right,
happiness,
but the ultimate
you won't be
question:
happy.
how do we determine which is the right direction and which is the wrong direction?
Well, you can feel it. You can feel it through your emotions. If you feel horrible and you feel really crappy about yourself, then you're not going to be happy, and you're obviously going in the wrong direction.
Well, I always feel like that. So how do you explain that?
Don't you know?
I'm getting so depressed right now. I'm just getting ready to let Craig take over. I'm gonna go jump off my house.
I don't think that's true at all.
Okay.
I think you've said that at the beginning of every
I've
show.
said that every show. I said I'm gonna jump off a house, and I never jumped off a house. We're gonna have a special show when I jump off a house.
Woohoo!
I do want to go through all the people we're gonna have in the show tonight again. Now that all the people are in the room, because there's starting to be millions of people in the room. No, I can talk on this mic. Yeah, there are people coming in the room. Tonight we have as your host me, Nick Jade, my co-host, the wonderful with bad tasting guys, Leslie. We have the other co-host, the regular, the infamous Craig. As the administrator, we have Marla Singer. But upcoming special guests, we have Dr. Lowell McRoberts. I'm really excited to talk to him about a kind of clinical evaluation of happiness. We have Liv the Magnificent, who did a bunch of research for us, did his neural database for us. And we also have the author of this book, who I forgot to mention in the first round of guests. His name is James Sala.
I think it's pronounced Salah, actually.
I haven't been able to pronounce it.
Say it.
Oh, it's pronounced
Oh,
Sala?
I thought it had an S on the end of it.
Okay, that'd be Mexican.
It's actually
Okay.
Jimmy
That'd be hot.
Saliva,
That'd be Javier Salas.
because he's an
This is
off
James Sala, apparently a guy with a mask, and it's called The Atheist. And I'm really interested to see what this is about, because the book's supposedly about happiness, and The Atheist makes me think it's more about religion, which, as we all know, there's not much of a relationship between those two things.
Seems like it could be a pretty good book.
I think so too, and of course we've all read it and researched it, so we all know exactly what happens in it. What's your favorite part of the book, Leslie?
I love the middle.
That was the funniest thing I've ever heard. The middle was really good.
Yeah,
Um,
the middle is the best part.
I actually specifically, I like the end. And Craig, what did you like best about the book? Now that we can hear you.
I'm probably gonna go with the end as well. I also love the end, which probably the best.
I actually did read the book, and I actually
I
do
did
like the book.
too.
And I know you read the book. What was your favorite part? Well, tell us your real favorite part then. Dude, come here, microphone. You want to if you want to whisper like secret love notes to me, just come on the microphone. You giggling blonde devil. She can't even talk. She's laughing. That wasn't even that funny.
Cover the mic, don't
You didn't even
whisper.
know. You read the book and you're getting it confused with other books. I heard that this book really kind of stood out among books.
Okay. I really like the idea of a sense of life scale, which I'm sure the author will speak about, so I don't want to really talk about it, but I think it's a good formula for gauging happiness.
Really?
Or
So we
trying to
picked the right
achieve
book
it.
and the right author is what you're saying.
Absolutely. I mean, this book definitely pertains to the topic.
But you said the guy dressed kind of funny.
He's a little eccentric, we'll just say that.
And he's from New Orleans.
You know, no one really knows where he's from. I heard his spaceship crashed.
And you said something about Mardi
He's
Gras.
stuck here. Definitely has a problem with Mardi Gras. He likes beads.
Where does he put those
Everybody
beads?
likes beads.
We don't want
You're
to
from
know
New
where
Orleans,
he puts
aren't
the
you?
beads.
I'm from Louisiana, not New Orleans.
Same thing. What? Is there anything else to Louisiana besides New Orleans?
Yes.
Like when you talk about Louisiana, it should be one big city of New Orleans.
Maybe.
And those drunk people go so far from they're stumbling around, they probably end up in every part of Louisiana. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to start going a little more in depth into happiness. I'm not going to do it because our other co-host Craig is just dying to take the chair. See what I have to deal with? I mean, do you want to write him a love note right now?
No, I don't
Why not?
write anything.
Because I'm gonna be in the chair in just a minute. She can just tell me.
I know.
Is
She's
there any
looking so
pronouns?
forward to it because I'm just that bad. That's part of the reason
I
I'm
don't think
getting.
you're bad at all.
Because you think I'm negative.
No, I don't.
You think I'm negative. You think I'm
I
miserable.
never said that. I say you look a lot towards negative things, maybe.
Okay, this is what's funny about you, Leslie, is you always say, oh, well, this is not what it is, and then you say it.
Well, no,
You go,
but
you're
I
not
think
eating
you-
chicken, but you do have chicken bones in your mouth, and you're chewing on a bird, and you're masticating it, and it has
I
feathers
think
coming out of
you
your...
as a person are not negative, but I think you try to see the negative a lot.
Why would someone try to see the negative if
Because
they're not
I just
negative?
think that's how you are. I mean,
It sounds like someone with psychological problems.
Oh my god.
You can say you don't have psychological problems, but your brain doesn't work at all. You're mentally damaged. You're schizophrenic.
No,
She's saying you're
I don't even think
critical
you're
that
negative,
you, right?
I think-
That's not what she said. I wish that's what you were saying.
Critical. That's a better word for it than critical.
Huh? It's pretty interesting. All right. Well, Craig, why don't you come over here? I know you're dying to do this, and I'm going to go get our guest, who's going to come in about 5 minutes to talk about his book, the infamous. What is it? James Salas?
Say.
Whatever his name is.
Say that.
Saliva.
Saliva. Same thing. You just knocked your whole.
Messed up name, Rand.
Hello all, I'm thrilled to be back here as always. Leslie, good to see you.
Hey,
Jim,
Craig.
glad still your nemesis. I'm sure it's obvious to our crowd.
It's
live in
Jesus!
some
I'm happy,
services.
I'm happy, you little unhappy schizophrenic bastards.
She's not in the picture.
Oh, okay, I'm never in the picture. You know what nowadays? I'm never in the picture.
That's what makes him unhappy.
I'm a George Bush Jesus. That's what that voice was.
Oh my gosh.
That's right.
Vessel says, "Woo! It's Jesus."
That's right. He's here to share wisdom with us.
Oh, make out with me, Craig.
Yeah.
Make out with me. Everyone else wants to make out with you, including that hoe.
I will say that we have some usual chatters this evening. So, hey, Howard Rourke and Vessel, glad you're back. We like what you have to say. It's good
Vessel.
stuff.
All right. So the happiness. I'd kind of like to bring it on back to something that one of our earlier commentators mentioned, is this idea about truth as it pertains to happiness. 'Cause I think that's really an issue for much debate, and probably segue pretty well into the James Salah book, The Atheist, where there's this criteria for happiness. Because we hear lots of things, right? We hear the ignorance is bliss line, and I think that some people really do think that a certain measure of ignorance actually begets a measure of happiness.
But like, as far as that goes, if you don't know a lot of stuff, I think that you can be happy in a way that it's just a base happiness. And you can focus on like the pleasures of life and just the sort of base existence that some of these people have.
So you think like maybe you can only be like at like this depths of happiness, right? So if you don't know most stuff, you could be happy about what you know, but if you don't know very much, you could really only be so happy. But you
Yeah.
wouldn't feel that unhappy.
Yeah, I think if you're on a different level of consciousness, I think that, if you're on a really sort of, I don't want to say shallow, because that has kind of a negative connotation, but I think that...
That's not happy.
Yeah. I think that people who are not, who don't have as many concerns as most really, really intelligent people,
Okay.
maybe,
So people with few or simple concerns.
I think they can be happy at a base level.
Right.
And as far as their experience goes, I think they can be happy.
Well, good. Yeah,
If
please.
it's at
Paul.
the base level, is it really happiness? I guess
Well-
the question then is, how do you actually gauge happiness? How do you define happiness?
Yeah, and I think
Question.
that's different for a lot of people.
So you think happiness is a subjective?
But is there? Yeah. I mean, is there a sort of difference? Like, let's say that I'm happy because I believe the world is flat. But that's not true. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say is,
Wait,
what's
it's
this
not
difference?
flat?
No, and I really hope that wasn't the key to your happiness, because I really
Oh my
wouldn't want to.
gosh,
I wouldn't want to
you
stomp all over
just
like that.
like-
'Cause that would be negative.
No, I'm gonna go jump off the
Happiness.
house.
No, that is rough. That is rough, and I guess I probably shouldn't have just thrown those types of facts out like that.
You shot
Don't really want to
yourself.
shock any viewers.
And I actually do have a viewer here that this is Vessel, thank you Vessel, who is saying that the whole ignorance is bliss argument comes from people looking back on their childhood experiences as
Uh-huh.
being
Right.
good, and I think in a way probably easy, as they were fairly ignorant as children.
Well, I think
So it's
some
no
people
problem.
don't ever progress. I mean, they don't ever really get past that whole adolescent childhood stage in their life. I think some people just do not even have the desire to learn or to experience anything else.
So let me ask you and the viewers and anybody who's ready to comment on this question about this idea that I mean, is there sort of an objective standard to happiness, or is happiness perfectly subjective? I mean, forget, can these simple people, if in their simplicity, if they, however trivial or insignificant, whatever it is, most fond of may be, that would be my question: is the enthusiasm, the happiness that they get out of that, is that the same as, for example, the happiness one would experience if they were to know something deep, complex, true, and very relevant? I mean, is there actually, can the sort of details of a truth really add to the value one gets out of it?
I think that the details do add to the value, and I don't think that they experience a deeper level of happiness. That people who actually seek out the truth and really strive for that kind of understanding, I really don't think that they experience that level of happiness.
And our viewers have actually asked for an operational definition of happiness, which is probably something we should have talked about before. I can read something from Wikipedia, which is
Sure, yeah.
the new encyclopedia.
Yeah.
So as far as, you know,
Contemporary vernacular, for sure.
absolutely, Mr. Big Words. So according to Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, which I love, by the way, it's great for synopsis on pretty much anything. Happiness is an emotional or affective state that is characterized by feelings of enjoyment, pleasure, and satisfaction. As a state and a subject, it has been pursued and commented on extensively throughout world history. This reflects the universal importance that humans place on happiness.
Isn't there a different definition as far as, is it Aristotle or Socrates, or I think one of them said it was the
Aristotle.
actual activity
Right.
of the action.
Yes. Well, I think our guest is quite happy, judging by his appearance. I don't think anybody.
I got our guest right now. If you guys want to.
Yeah. I see him off in the distance there.
We were asking for an operational definition of happiness, and I kind of read something that I thought was fitting, and was wondering if you agreed with that.
I mean, I really think you need to just decide whether you're talking about kind of emotional happiness or philosophical happiness. And if you want philosophical, you have to talk about reason. You have to go to the Greeks, and you guys are way too lazy to do that. I'd rather bring this guest on. He's actually really interesting looking.
All right. Without further ado, then, help me out here. Sir. Is it Salah? Is it Salah? Is it Selah?
Yo, man, I don't care.
See, obviously, this man's happiness is not contingent upon mere pronunciation. Without further ado, please, the one, the only, James Selah.
Yeah, that's right.
Usually he's toned it down quite a bit for us this evening. Usually does a far more outlandish appearance. But we appreciate you slipping in, trying to keep it low key for the fans. I understand we never would have gotten you in here had it not been for this.
That's how I always dress, man.
I usually think I usually think there's at least a few more colors, but
No, this is how I dress.
word, yo, word.
Dog.
Yeah, that's right.
Excellent.
Welcome
So
to
did
our
you actually
show.
write this book, sir?
Yes, I did actually.
Really? And how long ago did you write this book?
This book was written in 2003.
Okay. And you want to just maybe talk about the overview of it, if you could, perhaps, because we were discussing earlier about how, though it's called The Atheist, it actually seems to focus more on our subject matter, happiness. One would assume, therefore, right, that atheism is
Yeah, Leslie, that's a good point, Leslie. That's a good point. I've caught in a lot of cow manure over the fact that the book's called The Atheist, and the real thematic structure of the book is more about moral philosophy. It's more about understanding, as your host was talking about, a kind of Greek understanding of happiness, which comes from what we would say an objective rather than a subjective kind of potentiality. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean by all those words.
Oh, good. We can just leave right there then.
Yeah.
Yo, right. Well, hey, you have a boyfriend?
Oh, me?
She's
Yeah,
practically married.
That's up for debate.
Yeah.
I'm practically married to my non-boyfriend.
What does practically married mean?
He's
The planet I come from, practically married means that I can have you any time of the day.
Actually, Howard Rourke could probably answer this question better, but that's for a different
Okay,
show.
Howard Rourke, are you single?
Okay, remember, keep in mind though, the atheists and theists alike agree that you don't need to bring the mic over you.
Yeah, I don't like either one of those types
Regardless
of
of whatever paradigm you want to stem from.
Yo ho!
Here. Yes.
The
So,
pin pad was messing me up a little bit.
yes, and we would not want that to cramp your style.
Yeah, I've been working out tonight. Can you tell? I was working out for a few moments.
I can't even though it's a loose-fitting shirt. Kind of. Is it a
It
blouse?
makes me look kind of big.
Oh.
Yeah, it's Bill Blass.
Sure.
Yeah.
We can.
He's actually a friend of mine.
I don't want to really challenge that objective truth as to whether or not that makes it.
All right, let's get back to the book. Yeah, this is my book. What does that mean? Talk more about philosophy? This is my book. It's called The Atheist. You can find it anytime at lulu.com, and please feel free to buy many copies of it.
Well, let me ask you this now. So,
Can I go now?
no.
You kind of match
No,
your
I'm
book.
afraid not. I do have a few questions for you about this book. Before I
Okay, go ahead.
So, is one, what would be right one? I mean, clue us in here a little bit. Atheism, this objective happiness you talk about, are they the same road? Are they the same path?
I think the best way to answer this is one of the two protagonists of the book feels like atheism is the only path to happiness. that's not one of the main components to happiness. I think what he means is that atheism is a necessary condition for happiness, if that makes sense. Anyone who is happy is automatically an atheist.
I see.
Because living in a fantasy world just brings a brother down.
So what you're trying to posit is that we live in a godless world, and that because of that,
Well,
anybody-
obviously we live in a godless world. I'm not going to posit anything.
Okay, so you're gonna claim.
I'm not claiming anything.
Okay, what? So
I'm
what
just talking
word
about-
do you like? What would be the best
I
word?
think you have to back up a little bit,
Okay.
Leslie. What I have to do is I have to explain that what I've discovered about myself a long time ago as a writer and a thinker and a male dancer is that my brain is a lot smaller than other people.
Oh, really?
They actually did an average, just like you can figure the average size of a human male is about 5'9" and a half.
Okay.
It's up, standing up.
Right.
That's that kind of length. And they did that with the brain. The brain actually weighs 12.23 ounces on average. Mine weighs 1 ounce. It's that small, okay? So when I approach a complicated question like this, I can't wrap my mind. For instance, when I tell you that this is a godless world, it's not a claim, it's not an opinion. I mean, obviously this is a godless world. It's like telling you that I'm breathing air, or you know, that my hose is listening to me.
I see. Well, we could perhaps quibble about that, but that would perhaps be a different show.
If you want to embarrass yourself, I mean, that's up to you, my brother.
Right.
I don't
Well,
think your hoes can listen to the show because their computers probably all got washed away.
Got washed away what?
Katrina.
That was all hoax. Katrina was all made up. There was no Katrinas, no nothing.
big scam.
That was a scam to get my brother, Mr. Bush, out of office.
Right. And we're
He
sorry.
stands up for the people in this country. You know, he stands up for the people in this country who got vigilantly attacked. You know, by the Chinese. And he stood up to them, and we get mad when he invades China. Let's get back to the book.
Okay. If
Yeah,
you
we
insist.
definitely
I'm
need to
sorry,
get back,
Leslie, go ahead.
Get back to the book. That's for a different show, and we contemplate having you on again.
Again, you
Gotta
need to
focus.
contemplate.
Gotta focus. Okay, so what
Your idea was this a godless world? I was telling you how people that find God in a godless world, by definition, can't be happy because they're already so far lost.
So what you're kind of making claim here, right, is that a happy person is they become happy through objectivity, right?
That's exactly
objective
what I'm
understanding.
saying.
So
Exactly.
if something is a non-truth, somebody could never be completely happy while trying to validate the non-truth.
Well, I think another
That's
point.
it. I think that's a good point. I think we should move on.
I think another. Hey, don't jocularize me.
Thanks for joining.
What I'm saying is, I think I forgot what I'm saying.
If you ever knew to begin with.
Oh no, because what we're talking about is fundamental things. If you're not talking about fundamental things, a little slip up here and there, a godless couch, a godless cat, something
Yeah.
like that, not a big deal.
Not a big
If you define your whole world as perpetuated by God, and there isn't one, then every little thing, every little step you take in that world is going to be, an extension of that same kind of logical fallacy, that kind of irrationality, that kind of just so American, fantasy-based
So
perspective.
let's talk about this then. Let's talk about two people then who are both, shall we say, rational, both committed to this sort of
Like me and
objective
her?
truth. No, I'm talking about rational people committed to objective truth.
Snap, that's rude. You're fired.
I want to talk about me and her. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. And what I wonder is, as an author,
Can I say
philosopher, or as a dancer, do you believe that there is, a difference between this sort of subjective happiness and objective
I
happiness?
couldn't
And how
do
would
the dance for you guys on the show tonight if you want to. I brought my tearaway pants.
Like, for example, is there objective happiness available within observing you dancing, or is that a subjective happiness? If I were to see you dance and be happy about that, would that be an objective or a subjective happiness?
What are you talking about me dancing? What are you talking about? That sounds like subjective.
Oh, it sounds like subjective. Okay, so you just categorically say that's inferior to this objective happiness. Is that right? Like things that don't have a truth value.
Actually, I can bring this back to the book for you. My book is about a guy who it's a young Jewish boy, maybe in his 20s, kind of a smart guy, kind of lost, his philosophy's vague, let us say, which is actually better than most people around this, around this world. He's a smart guy, he interacts with this world, but he has a kind of vague conception of philosophy, and he's kind of depressed, he's kind of alone and isolated. And by a couple twists of fate, he meets this millionaire philosopher who feels like he has a grasp on a number of things. One of those is objective philosophy. He has a scale that he calls the sense of life scale. And the sense of life scale is steps that you can take to understand what objective happiness really is, starting with those still fundamental qualities that are not as impacting on you. They are still objective, they're still fundamental, but they're not as impacting to your overall happiness, reaching all the way to the top of the scale, which is the 10th sense, as they call it, which actually isn't revealed in this book. This is book 1.
I see.
But you get the first
How
9.
many
That's
steps?
pretty
You get
good.
the first 9. That is most of them.
You get most of them. I think the way to understand this book, though, is that Janus, the millionaire character, what he does is he understands you can't just tell people anything. No,
Right.
Socrates believed this. You can't just tell someone and they understand what you're saying. Go to anyone and tell them, correct one of their problems, for instance, and try to tell them something. You will get absolutely no results.
Right.
Obviously, you don't go, hey, you were drinking too much, my brother. Lay off the bottle. You get some justification for why they're drinking. You get some kind of, sure, I'll lay off the bottle. Okay, let me go find someone that'll let me drink. It's easier to deal with.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
No,
So
absolutely.
Janus understands this. He realizes that the way to show this young man these 10 steps is through life experience.
Mhm.
He makes him invest in a series of experiences, and this is a young man, the other character, who really is ready to invest,
Uh-huh.
right? So Janus brings in these 10 series, these 10 kinds of axioms, but through real life experiences. These things happen to this young man rather than are taught to him through some kind of class, some kind of lecture. I never went to school myself, as a matter of fact.
Really? You don't say?
Is it obvious?
No, no. Oh, I mean, I thought you had at least.
I spent my early lives putting myself through beauty college, and I did that.
Now that is obvious.
Yeah, and I did that through what we call the male dancing,
Right. Right.
and I can give quite a male dance.
I have the utmost confidence.
People don't like me talking about male dancing. I think it's interesting.
That
Okay.
sounds like a subjective happiness.
Okay, let me just get to the heart of the matter. This is why I wrote this book, and this is what you people really want to know. Okay? Do what?
We have a viewer that has a question actually before you get
Feel
to
free to ask a question.
Yeah,
I love talking to beautiful women.
objectivity, subjectivity. So then is happiness objective, subjective, neither, or both?
It's clearly both, my beautiful young lass. So, happiness is both. What I'm trying to tell you
Don't
is,
call me a lass again anymore.
well, your name's Leslie. What do you want me to call you? So, my point is, I'm just kidding, my brother.
I know.
My point is that, like everything, we have a subjective and objective component. What's important philosophically is the objective. Philosophy was originally truth-seeking, not related to the physical sciences, with an eye toward objectivity.
Right.
And every time that slips into subjectivity, what we have is some form of religion. That's what we have. And that's what we have today. 10,000 religions, because anyone with a subjective interpretation, which means their brain can come up with a particular religion.
So,
Or a philosophy, as
so
they
do you
like
think
to
that a
call it.
person reading this book can garner the wisdom, these 10, or I guess only 9, because book 1, these 9 standards of objective happiness, even though they're reading this book and they're not having those experiences, because as you were saying, Janice said,
Right, I think that's what's good about fiction, my brother. I think what happens is you invest in, I don't want to tell too much about the book, but you invest in this character, and like any kind of novel, what happens is it becomes, your experience.
all right then. So you relate to the character in the first person sense, the empathy, and that will allow you to digest.
I'm not
the
saying it's a
concepts
well-written
of
book. It's actually not that great.
I see.
Yeah, the
Right.
technical writing aspects are a little weak.
What do you mean
would
weak?
say. You might need an editor.
I don't need these kind of comments.
But I do
Can't you
think
just make her look good and be quiet?
I do think that the concept surrounding the book is very well written, and you do have a lot of empathy for the character. It is fairly well character driven, really. And so while you're kind of investing in these characters, you learn about the sense of life scale, which I really think is the most intriguing part of the book. And it is interesting.
Well, and
Kind of
another
the
thing
mystery,
is,
because don't you call it a mystery?
it's called a literary mystery, my lovely. And I think that in a sense is misleading too, because it is literature. It's in the literature canon. And that's why I think you buy into it. Junk books, as most books are, don't require any kind of investment, because you don't see yourself in the books, you don't believe them, that kind of thing. But what I think the scale does is it allows you to look at somebody, as Janice said you could, and just immediately come up with a number. I mean,
Because
you
you
have to know
weight
something
of
about their
people's
life.
happiness.
Well, ultimately, the scale tells you 10 things, but ultimately it's to have a scale. It's ultimately to say, so what are you, my brother? A 1, a 5, or a 10?
Right.
And I think, of course, it takes a kind of sagacious mind, but you can look at somebody and pretty quickly, from looking at their physical characteristics, which is I call the first kind of primary characteristics when you're gauging happiness, and that's actually related to some of the actual steps. You can look at that and say, I already have a handle on this. And then talking to them briefly, if you're a philosopher, you get to some of these questions quickly. And I think you can then gauge a person fairly quickly.
Well, that
And
sounds
say,
useful.
hey, my brother, you're a 3 or 4, I'm sorry to say.
That sounds
You know?
very, very useful for any number of things, you know, how to approach people, how to negotiate with them, how to manipulate them even if you sought to do that, or just trying to figure out who's worth spending your time on.
And I think the latter, of course, is the most important. You know, when I hire my host, that's what I do. I make sure that they're ones.
So,
I don't want insubordinate,
right. Nobody with
insubordination.
self-esteem or anything like that, right? That'd be bad.
So we do have an audience question. If happiness includes a subjective component, how can it be measured?
Well, you don't measure the subjective component. I think, my sister, what I'm trying to say is there's subjectivity in everything, in almost everything. And subjectivity is something we don't need. The founding fathers of this great country said that there was a subjective component in believing in God, that people should be free to have their own beliefs about God. And what Thomas Jefferson meant by that was a subjective thing. But by taking it away from politics, they're saying this does not have an objective component. It cannot be translated, my sister. I cannot go to people. And ultimately it means, my sister, that you can't have a conversation. You can't have a conversation with someone in the sense that you really conversate. You can't just say, I want to convince you of my belief if it's subjective. Because ultimately it's yours and no one else's. And you're free to have it.
Don't put
In
nails
this-
on a pedicure.
Okay, Mike Tyson. But my point is that subjectivity is something very specific to this process. And I will say, unfortunately, most people don't draw a distinction between subjectivity and objectivity. So what ends up happening is my personal beliefs, my ideas about God, my ideas about my host's acting. All of these things are subjective, and you enter into a conversation thinking that you have some kind of subjective effort, some kind of subjective intent, objective intent, and you go to persuade those people of this thing that only you can have knowledge. My old brother Immanuel Kant said the same thing. Confuse the line between objective and subjective and convince the world, my brother, the world that everything was subjective. And now Einstein, who I believe from the conversations I had with him was an objective man who we turned into a subjective man through this madman Immanuel Kant. He was cute, but mad. I don't know if that makes sense to you, my brother.
I mean, I definitely hear everything you're saying. A lot of controversial things there. I think that, I think that you're right, that, particularly about that point about when you blur the line between the objective and the subjective, there is a tendency for people to say that, they're fact-based claims or opinions when they're not. And it does muddle this issue of right and wrong, because I think the biggest point here, like you said, there is no way to measure the subjective. The subjective is self-affirming. The subjective is only, relevant and pertinent to the originator of the standard itself. So there is no comparison for that. So, the subjective standard of happiness is, whatever that individual wants to claim about it. But the objective standard, that is a little bit of a greater quandary, and that's why you have the 9 means to recognize it, right? Well, the 10, but as of yet only 9
That's
available to.
I couldn't agree. I have no idea what you said, but I can't agree with you more in this regard.
So,
Cannot agree with you more.
well, I'm affirmed that I have your agreement, not your understanding.
I didn't even understand what that meant.
I understand that you lack the ability to endorse me with an acknowledgement, but if you could just do it.
That was 3 in a row, my brother. It makes me like you more, but because of the fact your brain is so much bigger than mine, is you a religious man?
No, I is not.
You is not. Well, it's what I found cohesively coherent is that most people with big brains tend to be religious because, as you find in my brilliant novel here, what that big, Brother Kurt Vonnegut used to say this, that the big brains actually cause too much knowledge seeking, that the world is not susceptible to all of this knowledge, that big brain has to invent a world that's not even there.
It's a brain created by a world that actually doesn't have enough stuff to amuse that brain.
I think you're right. I think I got that one. That is exactly what I'm saying.
That's pretty disappointing, I have to say, folks.
And I think this big brain invents things like contradictory gods and angels and free will, a ridiculous concept, and then tries to make free will work with, am I off topic, my sister?
That's just people being stupid.
That's what I'm saying.
In-
Smart people are always the stupid in this.
What's Ripple?
Huh?
What's Ripple?
What's Ripple?
Excuse me?
R-I-P-P-L-E.
I'm asking the viewer, what's Ripple?
What's Ripple? This is potato chip, my sister. Shut up. Okay,
Can I
so
get- hold on. So would a person who loves Ripple be subjectively? Oh,
I think
it's
he's
cheap
making
wine.
something up.
Oh, it's cheap wine. So would a person who loves Ripple cheap wine be subjectively
Right. He's asking. He wants to know.
less
what's,
happy than a person who loves a nice Merlot?
Right.
right, he's not as sophisticated. He doesn't use reason. He doesn't understand the complexity of,
No, it's not
of what my
sophisticated.
sister. That's my cell phone. Can you give my cell phone, my
I get
sister?
it. I get it.
Because there are some women that are calling me.
He's
It's
asking
fine.
though. He
You
wants to
wait.
know. He's trying to bring up the standard of objective happiness. If you drink the cheap shit and you think it tastes
No, I think wine, just like film, just like hose, just like everything, has subjective and objective. And if you in your little mind think Ripple's the best, think Ripple's the best. But the fact of the matter is, there's good wine. We can all agree on it.
That girl says it depends on how much they drink.
You know, I actually know that girl. That girl has a problem with her drinking. Serious problem with her drinking. So much so I can tell you right
Are
now
you going to
that
add
hose
on
is
to
at
argument?
2.3.
Is this an ad hominem argument?
Yes.
Yeah, that's at home.
All right.
Hey, give me the phones. Hey, tell her to give me my $50.
I think we'd all like to know though. I mean,
Hey.
is a Merlot objectively superior to this?
No,
cheaper
Merlot
wine?
sucks. Didn't you watch Sideways?
I did, but that's kind of what I'm saying. Is I think we'd all kind of like to know that. Can you give us one example of objective happiness of superiority, or can just not ever be condensed that simply that you just have to buy the book and read the 9 steps? Or can you give us just one
I think
example?
you have to buy the book, but I'll try to give you an example. I thought we were already doing that.
Oh, well, I didn't know we had hit one. If we had hit one where you could say this is objectively better than this other.
I will quote my brother Aristotle. Can I have my phone?
Keep going.
I know, but I'm expecting some calls, and this hoe is $50. $50. What I'm saying is that a love note? Okay. What I'm saying
It's not
is,
you, don't worry.
what I'm gonna do is quote my brother Aristotle,
Uh-huh.
and he said that not only is there is it easy to find one objective thing, you have to start at a fundamental point to find that thing. You have to start at the beginning point. And what I think we can all agree on is that we could just use the word health.
Okay.
This is why my brother I look like this. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Because you're not healthy.
no, because I am healthy, my brother.
See, that sounds like subjectivity though, rearing its ugly head. That my standard of health and your standard of health could be different.
My brother, do you have a different body than me?
Yes.
No, I mean, does it work differently than mine?
Yes.
It does. What planet is you from?
Oh,
Earth, to the best of my knowledge.
Apparently not, because all human beings' bodies work almost exactly the same in an objective sense. They have subjective differences and objective components. And if you concentrate on the subjective, you forgot about philosophy, my brother.
Well, but wouldn't you say that, for example, what is objectively good or better is that which is more equipped to reach a goal or an end, right?
I think you're talking about my brother Aristotle
Okay,
again. The
so-
Telios.
Right. So when we talk about this
I met a
objective,
girl named Telios one time in the Telios.
was she smart like Aristotle? Did she care
No,
about
she
you?
wasn't that
Yes?
smart.
Did she know what it meant?
No.
She was just named that.
Got bubble butt though.
That's Teleop. That's something. Okay. So
Don't know my jokes, my brother.
no, I do. They're just above me, in spite of the.
No, my brain's too
size
small.
difference.
My jokes aren't above anybody. Keep going.
I'm just not cool enough then. So my thing is though, is that when you talk about this objective happiness,
hold on a minute.
are you talking about like objective happiness for a person or for a human being, or is that the same thing? Like, is the key, is the roadmap to objective happiness the identification of the goals of humanity and then one's fulfillment of those goals?
Well, I think, just give me the $50, bitch. Not damn. What I'm trying to tell you is that it's a matter of focusing. It's a matter of focusing on those objective things. You see what I mean? It's a matter of focusing on that, and that is your pathway. Is your question how to determine if you found the right objective thing, or if it's truly objective?
Yeah,
Because that
is it truly
because
objective?
that comes
That's the
from
objective thing.
that comes from a whole fundamental framework. That comes from a process of growing up and maturing into a philosophical framework that gives you things back from reality. It tells me, okay, this isn't what I thought it is. This is what I thought it is, and you refine it to where you know what objective is and what objective isn't. And you're not always right, my brother. I make mistakes.
So objective
I caught
happiness.
crabs 2 weeks ago.
So is objective
The worst thing
happiness
ever
that which
happened.
makes everybody happy? Is that
Yes.
the point?
If you're truly objective, if you have strayed and gone into the subjective, you
So
have every
subjective
right-
happiness is the thing that maybe makes you happy but doesn't make me happy. But the thing that makes you happy and me happy and everybody else, that's what makes it objective happiness,
I
right?
think you have it, my brother.
All right, I feel like
And I do need to get going. I do need to get
I
going.
think it's a good point for you to take off. I feel like I have it. I hope you have it. Do we have any questions?
Okay, so would non-humans be bound by the same theory of happiness as we are, or are they outside the bounds?
What?
Philosophical
Does this
view of
person watch
happiness.
too much Star Trek? But I like Star Trek too. but I don't know what he's talking about.
He wants to know if cats how are bound by. do
We
cats
talk
actually
about
subject-
objective qualities.
No,
We're objectively
so-
different than cats.
Pets, for instance, which Craig would.
Don't have the same requirements that we do.
Well, they don't have
And
the
I
same.
think what
But I'm saying,
Aristotle meant was that the main thing is the brain.
well, I think that you're right that they don't have the
It's like
same.
cats.
Well, but at the same time, like the cat, right? All cats. Perhaps there's one thing that makes all cats
My
happy.
sister?
Whoa. Hang on, before you take off one ask this. Let's say there's one thing that makes all cats happy. Let's say all cats like Purina cat food. But let's say not all cats like cat treats. So the cat treats subjective happiness, Purina cat food objective happiness. as
Well, the thing is, we don't know. You're right. I think you could probably find some way to analyze cat happiness that I really don't care about. But you would have to be a cat, probably.
All right.
You drank all my
Well,
drink.
there we have it. That was James Sala. The book is The Atheist. It is book one. There
Buy
are
my book. It's on lulu.com, or you can search for The Atheist. But if you go to lulu.com, put in my name, James Sala, you'll find my book. Please buy it. Please send me money also.
9 of the 10
And I-
signatures of objective happiness.
And as I typed earlier, for those of you who live in Austin, it is available at Book People.
All right, welcome back, Leslie. It's good to have you here.
Hey, Craig. What's going on?
Did you hear all that?
No, I didn't.
Oh, really? You missed some of it.
I did miss some of it.
All right, well, we'll just focus on the parts that you didn't miss then. Is that cool with you?
I missed most of it. What you think?
I see. Well, I can sum it up for you, I think. Oh, you got the gist of
Oh, I
it?
got the gist of it, definitely.
Okay. Well,
So,
we'll try to make some sense out of it then.
but happiness, I mean, that's an interesting subject.
I agree.
Because, happiness, I think, is what people make of it.
Oh, yeah. So
And I
you just
think-
kind of a very subjective perspective.
Well, I think that more people than Jim Sala likes to give props to.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I think that more people do actually feel happy in their lives. And I just say that because I think that most people are trying to follow their path.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the most important things in happiness, is to just follow your life's path.
So you can be true to your nature.
Exactly. Be true to your nature.
So you say
And
one path to unhappiness is resisting yourself.
well, yeah, I mean, because a lot of different things make different people happy.
Well, let me ask this real quick then. What do you think? I mean, is there a difference between somebody who says they're happy and actually happy? I mean, is there any way? Like, does it even make sense to, like, prove them wrong, so to speak? Like, you aren't happy, you don't know happy. Like, no, I'm happy. I don't want anything else. Is that
You
person
know,
happy?
what I think is that people do what they have to in today's society to be happy.
She's going to say something crazy.
And I think a lot of people just naturally follow their life's path. I think a lot of people are kind of disillusioned by the society that we have created, because yes, we have created it. But I think, like, within that context, I think that they do really strive to be happy. And I'm not going to say that it's true happiness or true fulfillment, but I think a lot of people really do enjoy the things that they do.
Well, this is interesting. I feel like you're kind of working towards this idea, this standard of happiness, which is ultimately all based upon knowing and
You have to
being
stop. I'm
yourself.
gonna get him on the phone.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to replace you, and you're gonna sit over there.
Okay.
Unless you want to stay on for a little bit. Just swap with me and then swap with her.
Okay,
So- Thank you.
I'm just letting you.
There was a unprecedented procedural discussion.
Procedure.
Yeah,
I'm
back.
still shook up by the guest.
Oh yeah.
You guys didn't have to talk to him in the back. Huh? Oh, you'll get in a moment.
you got to keep the help, satisfied, or else they're likely to storm
Talk
off.
more about happiness. We're gonna have him on the phone. We're gonna stop at any moment we get him.
So,
Okay.
you see what I'm saying though? That this idea that it sounds like what you're saying is that happiness is all about knowing and being yourself. And that this sort of inner conflict is the root of all unhappiness. you think?
Okay, so that's true. I mean, I think a lot of people kind of bypass the whole knowing yourself thing.
Okay.
But I do think that at a base level, people can actually just live and be happy. Although I do think a bunch of people actually live and be miserable. But I think if people would actually just really stop and just kind of absorb the things that are around them and the people that are around them and really appreciate it, I think they are happy.
So
If
you think that most people who
do
are unhappy it sounds like you're saying they're kind of unappreciative.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, they're just kind of unappreciative. Like, they don't recognize the good things in their life. And they just focus on the negative.
So do you feel comfortable in saying that every person who has lived or does live on Earth actually has more good things in their life than bad?
I think they do.
Oh, really? That's quite the claim. That is
No,
important.
I do think they do, and I think maybe they don't recognize it. Maybe they don't actually, stop and reflect upon it and really realize that yes, their life is good. I think a lot of people's lives are really good, and they just don't realize.
Well, this presents an interesting quandary, because let's say somebody does, as you say, have a quote-unquote good life. Well, let's say they're miserable. Let's say, because they won't accept that it's a good life or something. How could that person be happy even if they have a good life if they don't appreciate it?
In that case, if they're not recognizing it, then I think maybe they don't feel the feelings of happiness. But I don't think feelings of happiness is true happiness.
Right.
So,
Sayla would agree with you there.
yes.
As
And
a
I
jade.
think they might be doing the things that are making them happy, but they're just kind of missing the whole point of happiness.
That's very interesting. I mean, this idea that people can go through the motions, if you will, of happy procedures and yet not receive the benefit of them. I don't know. It's I think that we're all familiar with that notion of people not appreciating things, but as a standard of objective happiness, I don't know. That seems to almost remove the individual in question so much. I don't know. That's interesting. I do think it's clearly a stab at an objective notion of happiness, though.
I think you can at least feel happy.
Well, see, but if it's about a feeling, though, but if it's like I said, if it's all a feeling.
No, it's not all a feeling.
Uh-huh.
I think true happiness, but I think base happiness is something different. And I think people do experience base happiness
Uh-huh.
within their lives. I mean, it's a different thing, and I think people who are not as interested in being more in depth with this.
Or limited.
I'm just
All right, let's switch places with you, Greg, real quick.
Okay, sure thing.
Get on
Sounds
this
like
guest.
we've got guests. Yes, excellent. I'm gonna have to go around this way, man.
I guess I should sit back down.
I guess so.
Hey, Craig.
Hey, Leslie.
What you doing back there?
Hi. I hope everybody can still hear me.
Hold on, I'm gonna turn up some volume and see if you.
I'll do it.
It's Leslie. There we are. She's drinking something. Oh, wait. I think we have.
It's just water.
Yeah, it's just water. It's happy water. It's objective
Dr.
happiness.
McRoberts, are you there? Okay, I just put you on live. You're on Philosophy Live, and we're moving into the segment. We're going to talk a little bit more about clinical scientific happiness and not so much about mystical. Dr. McRoberts, you're a psychiatrist. So you have some familiarity, I guess, with happiness. And what we're looking for maybe is a definition of happiness, maybe a scientific perspective on how it's understood. What we found so far in the show is that there's a lot of definitions, a lot of subjectivity, and a lot of interpretations that aren't really clear in ways that would make us feel like we understood happiness to the extent that we could change it, adjust it, and work with it. What do you think about that? Yeah, we've had a lot of problems actually. I mean, what you're talking about is a lot more objective, which is what we were trying to focus on. We get kind of vague subjective interpretations to the extent that people don't even really seem to want to identify what it is. They would rather kind of keep it to themselves. And what we found a lot is self-evaluation of happiness, which seems to do us no good. So I think the perspective you're talking about is something that would be at least more objective. But what I'm hearing you say is that kind of a lack of unhappiness is what we're calling happiness. Right. Well, another thing we talked about, I think, was, I don't know if you're familiar with Aristotle's idea, with his ethics and with his interpretation of happiness. It was actually, pretty straightforward, which is always what's impressed me about the Greeks. But Aristotle's idea was that human beings actually share a lot of things in common. That's this objectivity that we talk about. And of course, you know that. I mean, physiologically and biologically, humans do have things in common, which is something that I think kind of as a trend now we seem to miss. So following that logic, I think some kind of positive happiness, something that would take someone past some kind of state of lacking depression or lacking unhappiness or lacking some kind of stressor. Now, something taking them past that could be identified by looking at these kinds of shared kind of objective principles that people have that seem to enhance their experience with existence. Right. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. That makes perfect sense to me. What would happen if you did take a more objective approach in the sense that you kind of, looked kind of cross-culturally at certain things, singled those things out, and then used those as criteria? Yeah. Right. Well, right. Well, that does bring an interesting question, and the question is, I guess the one we've been tackling all night. Maybe you can help us because it seems pretty basic. But this problem of self-identification, this problem of how we identify happiness in another person, whether we're a clinician or whether we're a friend or whether we're married to somebody. And what most of the studies we've seen rely on is a kind of self-evaluation, a kind of self-reporting, a kind of, there's a scale where in Britain, where they talked to people, a large sample, and said, are you happy? Just as simple as that. And, maybe they qualified it a little bit, but it was on a scale from 1 to 10, and as you might imagine, the most numerous number that turned up was 8, the second was 7, and the third was 10, which doesn't strike me as reasonable. But what's interesting is this self-identification and the reliance on that from people who are using objective standards, because it seems not objective if what we're doing is asking people if they're happy. And how would you do it in a practice, Right. Right. But it sounds like that's a pretty objective way of doing it, of strapping into a chair, and if you can somehow take into account all of those variables, you probably could get some objective information. I don't know how you would test that, because it's not about obviously eating. It would be like some general state. How are you in your general state? And this gives us some insight into why it's so hard to find the statistics, though, I think, too. I mean, if you looked up statistics on almost anything else, you'd find a lot more out there. And on this, there really isn't that much stuff. There's not that much serious stuff. Yeah, that's another interesting way to look at it, because I've never looked at it that way. I've always thought of looking at it from the other angle, not measuring the sadness. I can't hear him. Are you still there? Okay, we're having a problem with one of the phones on and one's doing. We were trying to swap them. Go ahead with what you're saying, though. Yeah, and I guess if you're not a doctor, it's easier to kind of not worry about the cultural elements of it and say, well, in my regular life, what I would do is judge it this way and judge it that way. And I think as a clinician, it's harder to separate that stuff, maybe. Yeah, you're not really there to treat people that are really in the middle or really happy. And right. Right. I guess the reason I came over to the show is because it didn't seem as difficult to me, and maybe, like I've told everyone on air, I don't have the biggest, my brain isn't as big as everyone else's, so I seem to come to answers a lot quicker, so maybe I'm just dead wrong. But I always felt like I could identify these things, and that's kind of why I came up with the ideas of the show. The last thing I wanted to ask you, because I know you're a busy guy, is about what you said about religion. And you said that there was a direct correlation between having faith, having some kind of religion, and maybe some kind of stable happiness. I think you mentioned even not having depression, for instance. Right. Well, have these people been identified as happy, or is this purely the self-reporting? Right. Right. Well, certainly you could think of a way to do that. I guess it's just never been done. Like you could say, this many people came to therapy and required therapy, and of these people, there was a higher percentage of them that were religious than in the normal world, or less, if we're trying to say, you know what I mean? It would seem like. Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Right. Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's supported by what we find in the statistics, and I think you'd have to go a lot deeper and do some studies that we probably wouldn't be allowed to do to find anything more about it. But yeah, I don't want to take up any more of your time, so yeah. Right. Yeah, and in a sense, that it's not your job to take it too far, obviously. That's what philosophers get accused of doing, obviously, and then they even get executed for doing that. Right. That's exactly what Kara really found that interesting. I think she fell out of her seat. But yeah, I mean, and fortunately as a doctor, you can look at it in the perspective of science, which of course we all know is not the same perspective of philosophy. So sometimes I kind of envy that particular perspective. Exactly. Right. Yeah, which makes perfect sense. Maybe I'm glad I wasn't a doctor then, actually, now that I think about that. Yeah. I think you were right. All right, well, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for letting us call you, and hopefully we'll talk to you in the future sometime. All right, thank you. Bye. All right, I've always been interested in the scientific perspective, so I figured we could get some interesting information there, and I think we did.
That's a good
We
picture.
learned two things. We learned how the scientific, at least this part of the scientific community, uses what they can and cannot do to evaluate happiness. We also learned that our phone system sucks.
We learned that,
Are
or
you
we were
responsible for this
reminded?
phone system?
No, but I wish you could have heard it.
Oh, because you couldn't hear the thing. Yeah, none of the earphones work, and I don't even think the other
We're
phone.
gonna get good at this shit someday.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, maybe if we were happier, we'd have better phones. Were you telling me something earlier
Maybe
about?
better phones would make us happier.
Oh, yeah.
It would. That is true.
I think you just ate the microphone. But
Sorry.
didn't you say something earlier? Huh?
I think it was Mike.
Yeah, turn it on. I turned it off before you were getting
Too loud.
feedback.
Oh my god. Yeah, listen.
And to all the viewers, thanks for coming back in. I realize we had some
Yeah.
technical difficulties there. What Jim doesn't know is that we were.
We really
Kicked
need
again like always.
somebody
Kicked
who
for a
knows how
moment.
to do this technical stuff. Like honestly, I'm making
And
a
the
plea.
vodka.
Okay, listen, I'm gonna ask you something over with that. Because you're pleading.
I'm
'cause,
pleading. We need somebody who can help us do this.
Okay,
stuff.
listen to me. You said earlier that you thought in some ways I made the phones not work
Well,
by my own kind of attitude about the phones.
I mean,
and that's fine.
okay, well that's the slippery slope. I think that you personally, because you don't specifically desire to know these phones because you just don't like them.
Okay. I need
You
to
have
be
an
friends with the
aversion?
phones. Do I need to be friends with the phones?
You do. You have to be friends with them and don't put them off like, ooh, what is this? Because I used to do that
With phones?
with electronics in general.
Right.
Everything. Like I used to hate it. But now that I realize they're not our enemies, they're our friends, now I'm learning to deal with them better. And I think you should do that. And I think you
I'm
should
not- I'm
find
still
somebody who can do that.
I'm still not quite clear on what exactly I'm supposed to do to be friends with the phones.
I don't know, you need to have a better understanding, maybe?
Do you just mean read the
What?
directions?
Who's this guy?
Oh my God.
Hey, guy.
Hi, gal. How are you
Hey.
doing?
I think we have another special guest in the audience this evening.
Yeah, I don't think our special guest wants to be a special guest unless he wants to
May-
come in and talk about his own happiness.
Who may
Well,
want-
I
He's
miss all the
taking his shoes
scientific
off.
stuff.
That's a sign.
How'd you know we were doing scientific stuff?
Okay,
Because I've been
so
out wandering around. How can I get in here without interrupting the show?
Okay.
We heard
That
us.
door's locked. That side, I have to like walk right through camera zones.
Right.
so Leslie, I actually have a question for you.
Yes.
From the audience?
That?
Are you basically saying that you make your own happiness?
I think, yes, I do think that you choose to be happy. And I think everything else in your life, you should govern around that happiness. Whatever that happiness is to you, I think you should make everything else in your life succumb to that happiness.
This is kind of the same thing with me inventing my own unhappiness with the phone somehow. And I just,
Well, you
I haven't
do,
figured it out yet.
because you don't, okay, you hate the phone because it doesn't work.
No, but I don't hate the
However-
phone before it stops working. I hate it.
No, I don't believe that's.
You're saying it's like go into it with a negative attitude.
Kind of, because you don't like it. I mean, you're kind of like, oh, I don't like this phone, and ugh, it's messing up on me. And so it continues to do so because you don't understand, you don't really absorb the way that.
But I know, this is what I'm saying is you seem to give like human qualities to the phone. As if I could like
Well, I mean, no,
understand in the way I would understand a girl, which I don't understand any better than a phone, so I see what you're saying.
but I
but-
think that it's not human qualities, but you have to understand the qualities of the phone before you can actually understand it.
You're starting to sound like Plato, actually. Plato said that there's things in themselves, like I
He's a
understand.
pretty smart guy, right?
No, he was a moron. He's the one that started Christianity, as far as I'm concerned.
What?
So Jim,
Plato started the whole thing. I'm not saying he intended to do it.
All credibility that we built up has
Plato took
I
the
don't think you
kind of.
have any
Craig
credibility.
says all the
in that.
credibility
Plato
is
started
left.
Christianity now?
Let me just try to recoup my my Craig value, because I think if Craig looks at me in a nice light, you might look at me, because you are so fond of Craig that if I can
No.
win Craig, I can win you. And that's just the way I look at it.
I like Craig because
You like Craig because you think
We
he's
have-
cute, because he's so masculine.
we
because
have because we can talk about stuff, and and he understands it. Like I talk about stuff and he understands it.
In other words, he kisses
And
your
like,
ass.
No, he doesn't. I don't think it's true. I think he
Okay,
really
okay. Let me just go on about the Play-Doh thing. Okay, because all I want to do is get mad, and my heart's
Don't
gonna
be
get
mad.
broken like it does every
Don't be
night.
mad.
Okay, and I want to talk about this Plato thing for 1 second because these are people that were, after Socrates, were concerned with moral philosophy. And the point is that these philosophers were moving in what we call a direction of monism, which was kind of like categorizing objective reality into one sensibility, into one way of understanding it, into one reality. And what Plato did was come along and put a rift in that.
Well,
and
I don't
create-
believe in one sense of reality.
Okay, well, that's why I called you Plato. What Plato is known as the
he's
first
a really
dualist
smart guy.
in the sense that he separated reality into two sections, the one we could know and the one we could not know.
No, we can
Being
know
as they
other
are and the
realities.
being, huh?
We can know other realities.
Well, Plato even said that too. He kind of, and that's why Plato wasn't Kant and he wasn't a Christian. He said our goal is to use our reason to understand. According to Plato, there was kind of a covering over everything. We didn't see what the thing was, and what we do as philosophers is try to look past that at the real thing. But as setting up this dual system set up the kind of later predilection for relying on a dual system that the Christians did. And there's no coincidence that the later Christian philosophers were Neoplatonists. They grafted Plato onto Christianity in order to legitimize Christianity within the canon of Western philosophy. They didn't graft Aristotle on, they were afraid of him. Even, I think someone did actually graft Aristotle on. Was it Aquinas that tried to do Aristotle too? These
Okay.
people scare me so much, I tune them out.
Our viewers are interested in hearing your subjective criteria of happiness.
That would be very personal.
Isn't it? Like, I don't have a subjective one because I don't think subjectively like everyone else does. I mean, it's a great question, but I think she could give you subjective criteria. She would call it objective, but she would give you subjective criteria and you could use those and then fail in life.
No, I do believe in objectivity. I just,
You love it,
I
yeah.
think it's a dual existence. I don't think you could only be objective. I think you have to be
Okay, so sorry, the viewer made a mistake and meant objective criteria.
Okay, there you go.
Well, I mean, that writer that we had on earlier that wrote that book, I think he was a little extravagant, but I did talk to him backstage and I got some information from him. And he did seem serious about objective philosophy. You could buy his book. It's called The Atheist. It's at www.lulu.com.
And book people.
And you go to Book People if you live in Austin, and it is on the shelf, but I think it just sold out actually at Book People.
Yay!
So it'll be another week before they will
You should get some new copies in soon.
Yeah, hopefully that guy will get new copies in and he'll take them to the bookstores that demand such great literature. But what I'm saying is, from what I got from him, there is an objective way, but it took him a long time to get to that scale. It did a lot
But
of...
you know what?
What?
I don't believe you can only be objective.
Well, no one's saying you can only be objective. We're just saying it's the only way that works.
No, I don't think that's true at
Here's
all.
the thing. There's no subjective reality that does
What do
anything for you.
mean?
Well, unless you really believe you can do things with your own mind that have nothing to do with objective reality, which I don't know why I'm talking because I know you believe that. So.
Well, you can. You have to be subjective. In a way. I mean,
I've said you can be subjective, it just doesn't do you any good.
No, it does do you good.
Okay, well, how does it do me good? I haven't matured.
By defining the parts of your character
Yes.
that are pervasively subjective. For
Yes.
example,
Which is objective.
okay, but no, well, that's the same thing as saying that. All right, that's the same thing as saying that because there is a objective definition of the word subjective is objective. My point is just that. Sorry about the camera, people. My point is just that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, so I'm saying that, look, you talk about the subjective versus objectivity. Yes, this is
Yes,
the microphone.
right, get the-
I'm talking into it.
Don't
I
move
hope
it
you can
around.
all hear me
Stay
right
within
now.
6 inches of it. Don't move it around. Don't
It's
hold
so
it in
nice
your
to be
hand.
with you. Okay, listen. So I don't even remember my point now. Okay, after all of that, I was saying something about subjective versus objective. You said that that just makes it objective. Look, the point is like you two have a subjective appreciation. Do you like blue better than red?
I like blue.
I agree that there are subjective things. They
Blue
don't
is
matter.
very much better than red.
My
But how do they
preference
not
for blue
matter?
doesn't matter.
But could it matter? Could it matter if you're wearing a blue suit, the chick sees you, and she also prefers blue, and so she ends up hooking up with you because that's subjective approval? Like your haircut,
In a
is another
sense-
subjective
in
thing,
a
right?
sense, yes, there can be, but the important aspect of what you just said was the objective component of women wanting to identify with men, not the
But
blueness
they identify with men on a subjective basis because they empathize as individuals.
because they're crazy.
Okay, but then they want to emphasize about the crazy people, which would be a subjective perspective, right? So my point is that subjective preferences can significantly shape what types of relationships we have, and relationships
With
are generally
crazy
important.
people,
This is
yes.
true. No, what?
I think what holds relationships together is the objective framework by which you operate. That's why no one has a good relationship.
What?
My whole point is everyone's miserable and everyone has a bad relationship. Those two things are correlated.
I don't
They're
think that's
correlated
true at
between
all.
meshing your subjective things and not your objective things. And what Craig is saying is kind of right because what he's doing is combining objective and subjective, and he's failing to see that the objective ones are the things that hold people together.
So we have a viewer that's
I
saying.
am talking too fast. You're right.
You are actually, but that objective.
That was in
like,
stereo.
The basic idea would be objective equals no emotions, subjective equals looking with emotion. Something that I can't
true.
read with.
I don't know.
Objective.
So basically, objective is no emotion, subjective is looking through at the world with.
That's kind of true.
But isn't it objectively true?
Emotions do factor into stuff.
But isn't it objectively true that if a 1,000-pound brick falls on your foot, you will have the emotion of pain?
That's not an emotion.
It's
That's
an
a
emotion. It's a
sensation.
physical reaction. Yeah. It's a
Yeah, it's a sensation.
Pain isn't an emotion?
Pain is not
I
an
think emotion can be
Sensation.
objective.
What?
Yeah, I think there
I
are
don't think it's
objective
subjective.
definitions of emotions. Yeah.
Well, in the same way your intellect can control emotions, your subjective experiences can be controlled by objectivity. And I think there's a relationship between your emotions and your objective states. I mean, I think the fact that we all have emotions is objective, for instance. And the fact that we would all feel pain when a brick fell on our foot is objective,
Oh, I just think that's a sensation because you're human.
which makes it objective.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, kind of.
There's a lot of sensations we can have. We could actually talk about some other sensations right now. You know what I mean? Like, so if I played with your knee or something, there'd be a kind of sensation.
Okay, so
And that's what would make it subjective, right?
That's the objective.
Didn't you say you don't like holding hands with people?
Not anymore.